So one of the most random and out of left field DC crossovers just released. And I for one don't have too much knowledge on Sonic and all of the other characters in that universe, but when you have Sonic the Hedgehog and the Flash, the fastest man alive, racing and going head to head, yeah, just take my money, you sold me instantly. So you might be saying, okay, well, in what way would the Justice League have to cross over with Sonic and the rest of the heroes? What could be the reason? And the answer is simply Darkseid. It's always Darkseid, because apparently DC right now doesn't want to get any of their other villains any of the spotlight. And Darkseid, regardless of where he is always power hungry and looking for more. Because as he arrives in this new universe, Sonic's dimension filled with untold power, yeah, instantly this planet here starts to be overrun with Darkseid and his forces. Something that the Hedgehogs, no matter how powerful they may be, have never encountered. And side note, something that I think is pretty funny, you know how Thanos has his Thanos copter? Well, it seems like Darkseid here has his own little ship, in the shape of his own head, kind of like a portable, smaller little Death Star. Regardless, as Sonic, Tails, and Amy go to fight this little army, they quickly rule out that, yeah, no, this isn't Dr. Robotnik, and that these parademons are creatures that they have never seen before. And no matter how many they put down or defeat, portals open up and an endless army of them just come pouring out. So Sonic, doing what Sonic does best, utilizes his speed and gets everybody out of there, saying that if these things came out here, that means there are possibly other places around the world too. Because yeah, as we find out, Darkseid has launched a full planetary attack, an invasion, looking for something very specific, as we will soon find out, as you see Darkseid descending up, riding in his ominous head-shaped vehicle, approaching a floating structure, something called the Angel Island. As the comic goes on to say, the Father Box said the island is held up by something called a Master Emerald, which is being safeguarded by a singular lone guardian, in the form of Knuckles himself, which if Sonic is the personification of speed, Knuckles is the same for power and strength. And here we finally realize what Darkseid is doing at this floating interesting island. He is after this giant green Master Emerald, because as we see him talking to Desaad upon their little ship, Desaad says the Father Box also detects that this gem has the power to neutralize what we're searching for. Essentially for Darkseid and his plan, what he is searching for, this giant green emerald is almost like it's kryptonite, which is funny because it's green just like kryptonite as well, but it seems like this is the only thing that could stop his plans, so Darkseid simply says eliminate it. There's only one hang up. If he uses the ship's power, which we find out this giant Darkseid head ship is called the Ragnarok, then this giant floating head will lose most of its power. But Darkseid has one simple answer, saying, once I have obtained what I seek, power will never be a concern again. So yeah, Darkseid is up to doing Darkseid things, searching for the ultimate power to subjugate the rest of the universe, or universes in this case. And as Darkseid powers up his giant powerful beam, we see it is strong enough to not only obliterate the Master Emerald, but the complete island and seemingly Knuckles in a crossfire. And yeah, this so far just leaves a lot of things unanswered. Like, how did Darkseid and his forces even get to this universe in the first place? And since he is here, does that mean some of the other Sonic villains like Dr. Eggman among others are in the DC universe? Either way though, as we move back over with Sonic himself, he eventually makes it towards Sunset City, which again, it is being overrun by the parademons swarming the city, causing chaos, whatever. And so Sonic goes to do what Sonic does, going fast to see who he can protect, until he is met by somebody else on the same level as him, the Flash, the fastest man alive. And here are a couple very interesting things to note here. The first one being, we don't really get any confirmation if this is Barry or Wally. Now yes, it looks like the classic Barry Allen suit, but Wally over the years has wore this, and maybe in this crossover or separate universe, whatever this is from, he's wearing the same thing. And to further back this up that this might be Wally West instead of Barry Allen, immediately as they meet, we see the Flash confuse Sonic with being another character named Crackle. Now if you're not familiar, Crackle was essentially DC's version of Sonic. Not literally, but an inspiration. Because in an issue back in 1998, there was a story in which the Flash went against two cosmic beings in a race for the fate of Earth. Now eventually the stakes led to Wally having to race against instant teleportation, which in and of itself is kind of crazy. Like, how do you race and beat something that's in an instantaneous? But the Flash being, well, the Flash, eventually he is able to be successful, but only with the help and kinetic energy of this creature made out of pure radio frequency named Crackle. Crackle also being a speedster in his own way, and resembling the blue hedgehog that we see here. All of that being said though, Sonic is, well, Sonic, and he is much faster and has no idea who the Flash even is. And here we finally get to see one of the most hyped moments throughout this entire story so far. The Flash, the fastest man alive, going head to head and racing against Sonic the Hedgehog. And at first, who we can safely assume to be Wally here, he goes on to say, listen kid, I'm the Flash, I'm speed personified, instantly getting the upper head against Sonic. But in the same vein, Sonic then speeds ahead of Flash, saying if you are speed personified, then I am speed perfected. And listen, like, it doesn't matter if you think the Flash would obliterate Sonic, or you think Sonic just simply outpaces the Flash, you can't deny that this interaction with these two incredible characters is just not the coolest thing ever. But even as the Sonic races ahead of Flash, we see the Flash isn't too far behind, as instantly he starts gaining and gaining fast. But while these two heroes are meeting, we move over into the city, into the direct chaos of Darkseid's invasion, and see some other heroes make their introduction, in the form of Silver, who is another hedgehog with great power who works with Sonic, and John Stewart, a Green Lantern. And as we will soon find out and see, it seems like each of the Justice League members and hedgehogs and other characters a part of Sonic's team, they each kind of have almost a one-to-one direct counterpart to each other, with obviously Sonic and the Flash, Green Lantern here and Silver, Batman and Shadow, even as we will see Wonder Woman and Cyborg with Amy and Tails. But as Darkseid invasion rages on, we see his son Calibex also joins the battle, who is very powerful in his own right. But we also see that the heroes or hedgehogs of this universe are more powerful than they may seem at first glance, because even Knuckles goes on to almost one-shot Calibex himself. And it kind of makes sense, you know? Within the Sonic universe, world invasions or universe-conquering entities aren't exactly anything new to the hedgehogs. But at the same time, very few are on the level of Darkseid and the power he brings. And just then Superman, arguably the most powerful being on the league. You know, some people think the Flash may be more powerful or beat him in a fight, or even somebody like Martian Manhunter, but you know, that's not here or there. Either way, he arrives and instantly defeats the son of Darkseid pretty easily. Knuckles, even being mad at Superman for how easy it was, says he wasn't done with him just yet. But with Clark's arrival though, we finally see the two teams meet up and introduce each other in its entirety. And we find out a couple things. Firstly, it was Superman who saved Knuckles last second against Darkseid's initial attack against the Master Emerald. Secondly, the League here, the Justice League, explains who they are and how they got here. Clark explaining that he's Superman, protector of truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. And then you have Wonder Woman, the princess of Themyscira, John Stewart of the Green Lantern Corps, the Flash, protector of Central City, and the fastest man alive, Cyborg, the tech guy who enabled them to reach this world, and then Batman, the protector of Gotham. And on the flip side, we see Sonic in the same fashion introduce his group. And something we see throughout the story so far is Sonic and Flash having this almost antagonizing relationship, going back and forth and teasing each other about who really is the fastest. Sonic saying that he is the real fastest thing alive, while he goes on to introduce the others. Tails being the genius of the group, Amy, who he just introduces as his best friend, Knuckles being the tough guy, Silver, a hero from the future, and Shadow being self-proclaimed the ultimate life form. But even Knuckles realizes the importance of what's going on in the time they are wasting, as he goes on to say, who's responsible for this invasion and how do we make them pay? In which we actually get a pretty cool explanation of this version of Darkseid and his new plan. The comic going on to say, his name is Darkseid and he's bad news, conquering worlds and looking for the anti-life equation. Yeah, we stopped his ambitions in the past, but now he's launched a new type of satellite called the Ragnarok. You know, the giant floating ship that is in the shape of his own head. It is built with the specific purpose of crossing dimensions. And the Justice League guess that they are here in Sonic's universe, seeking extraordinary powers outside of the normal scope of the DC multiverse to fuel his conquest. Which makes sense that if there's a very powerful power source, Darkseid will cross any amount of space to get to it. But at the same time, I feel like Darkseid in the main DC universe hasn't really tapped into any of the external forces that he could use to power himself up. Like, imagine if Darkseid somehow was able to harness and use the Speed Force, a being as powerful as Darkseid moving and operating at the speeds of the Flash, or even other forms of energy or powers like straight up magic in DC. But maybe because there's already, you know, powerful speedsters and powerful magicians and people who use magic, that would try to stop him from acquiring that ultimate power. So he instead looks to go to other places where they don't exactly know who he is and what he can do, such as the Sonic universe here. The Justice League even revealing that they made their own boom tube and followed him here, and that's how they connected. And yeah, if you haven't realized or if it wasn't clear enough, Darkseid is clearly after the Chaos Emeralds, which, if you're not familiar, they are these very powerful artifacts of power within this universe, granting the user and whoever has one almost reality-altering power. And of these Chaos Emeralds harnessing chaos energy, there are 7 of them, kind of like the Infinity Stones over in Marvel, which when you gather all 7, you get an even greater sum of powers than you would individually, which is kind of weird, you know? Like, each emerald by itself doesn't have specific abilities like the Infinity Stones, as I just mentioned in Marvel. There's no time emerald or space, mind, whatever. They're all just individually powerful, and the only benefit of getting all 7 of them is just power on top of power. Which, yeah, so for Darkseid to do whatever he needs to do, he only really needs 1 Chaos Emerald at its full capacity. And this is bad because as the Justice League goes on to hypothesize, they think with this kind of power, Darkseid using and harnessing the powers of the Chaos Emeralds, he could not only destroy countless worlds, but he could straight up just manifest and create the anti-life equation directly. You know, the thing that bends other sentient beings to his will, essentially allowing him to enslave the universe as easy if it was just nothing. So yeah, this is bad enough. But Darkseid, being the strategist he is, he already located and took out the only thing that can stop him, the Green Master Emerald from the beginning, which itself could have negated the powers of the Chaos Emeralds. But while everybody is getting familiar with what's going on and what they can do, suddenly Shadow storms off. Being the loner and brooding member of the Sonic group, he decides that he would do better off on his own, And here we see just another great moment within the story. We see Batman and Shadow the Hedgehog formally interact for the first time. And like I said, Shadow is the dark and brooding type, just like Bruce himself is, with Shadow never really wanting to work with others if he doesn't have to and closing himself off. But Batman, Bruce Wayne, being the world's greatest detective, he instantly sees through this, going on to directly and correctly ask him, who was it? Who was the one you couldn't protect? The one you watched die in front of you? And of course, Shadow is just instantly just flabbergasted of how Batman could even know he went through something like this in the first place. But Batman, having lived in a place like Gotham, you kind of see it all already, so this isn't anything new to the Dark Knight. But finally, eventually, Shadow does open up about what happened and why he is the way he is now, going on to tell Batman about a person named Maria, someone who was very crucial and helped Shadow, but also someone that Shadow wasn't able to protect as she was eventually gunned down by the military trying to keep him safe. So he swore to never let it happen again, never let anybody in. And throughout this entire interaction, dare I say they almost create a bond? Okay, maybe not that far, but they definitely come to an understanding of each other due to their similar trauma in their current mission. But could you just imagine for a second Batman as a therapist though? Like surely Batman, being as intelligent and capable as a detective he is, he will be more than good at identifying whatever problem you have, just like he did with Shadow here, and help you through it in some way or fashion. But also in the same vein, at the same time, Batman isn't always the most emotionally available guy. He has issues of his own that he still hasn't worked out, so maybe that isn't the best idea. But so now with everybody on the same side and knowing what they need to do, they decide to split off and cover more ground for one exact mission: to find the Lord of Apokolips and stop him from gaining ultimate power. Tails and Cyborg leading to put their tech together to track down the emeralds, Superman and Knuckles flying off, Wonder Woman and Amy in the same vein, even Batman and Shadow riding off on motorcycles together, which doesn't matter who you are, it's pretty awesome. And of course Green Lantern and Silver. But the main thing I want to focus on, and most of other people watching this I'd assume so, is Sonic and the Flash, as once again they are teamed up and go racing off. And from what we can see while they go head to head, the comic is almost portraying them as equally matched, more or less. Now yeah, the Flash and Sonic probably aren't going 110% of their speed and capacity, but they are definitely similar enough in speed where it's not too big of an issue. The Flash, I'd assume, being surprised that this little blue creature could keep up with him, while he goes on to question how did the Sonic get so fast in the first place. But it turns out the answer is just unamusing. Sonic's simply saying it's all natural. No crazy science accidents or anything, he's just simply a normal hedgehog, I say in quotations, and was just born like this. Also a side point, which I don't know if it'll be brought up later on, but it seems like this Sonic universe, the place they're in, is out of the DC multiverse in general. So how does the Flash even have access to his speed and the Speed Force in the first place? As usually when the Flash is going into a new territory, a new universe that doesn't have the Speed Force naturally incorporated in there, he usually just loses his speed and isn't able to tap into the Speed Force. Such as the Marvel and DC crossover that happened decades ago, the Flash ran into the same thing and lost against Quicksilver. So I wonder if here it's going to be like the Flash slowly starts to lose his speed and isn't as fast as he normally would because he doesn't have access to the Speed Force, the thing that he gains his powers from. As they continue though, they speed their way through and get to the South Islands, and they finally see it. Darkseid himself, standing at an imposing height and at full power. He has found one of the Chaos Emeralds, going on to look at the speedster duo and say, it all starts with this, a gem containing the ultimate power. Which yeah, like I said before, Darkseid only really needs one Chaos Emerald to unlock, a level of reality shaping powers. And with it here now, there is no telling what kind of chaos he is going to unfold. Because as we see the Flash and Sonic first being able to confront Darkseid after gaining the power of the Chaos Emerald, the Flash of course tries to warn Sonic, saying that yes, that right there, that is Darkseid, and whoever you have faced in the past, consider him worse. But Sonic, being the overconfident speed devil that he is, immediately rushes in saying he likes the challenge. Unfortunately, neither Sonic nor the Flash can do anything to Darkseid in this state, as all of their attacks and blows are utterly useless as Darkseid barely even notices them, with instead Darkseid deciding to retaliate with his Omega Beams, which of course, if you may know, if you are able to be hit with them and you aren't strong enough to block or fast enough to escape, you will essentially just straight up be deleted from existence itself. But knowing the Flash and Sonic the Hedgehog, they are known to be very fast. But even Sonic himself is having troubles escaping the speed and unrelentlessness of the Omega Beams. But when raw speed can't solve a situation, experience always comes on top, as the Flash has dealt with this type of things before, and they decide to run towards each other, letting the beams hit and cancel each other out. Of course, causing a giant explosion, allowing Darkseid to escape. Escape with one of the Chaos Emeralds, which in the right hands and right knowledge can virtually give you unlimited power. And so with this, all of the other Justice League members scouring the earth for more of the Chaos Emeralds are made aware that Darkseid is now stronger than ever. And while this is happening, while the heroes are scrambling around to find some sort of attack plan or something they can do, Darkseid arrives back to his home base. Of course, moving over to find the rest of the Chaos Emeralds to obtain actual godhood. And could you imagine if Darkseid is able to gather all of the emeralds and essentially going Super Saiyan? In the same way that Sonic can go into Super Sonic, his golden form where he's much more powerful, Darkseid would potentially be able to do the same thing, turning into Super Darkseid. But as we find out, the Justice League and the other heroes are essentially making it harder for them to pinpoint and track down the other emeralds, as they are jamming their father boxes and ways to route through this new world. So Darkseid goes on to say, "Send my elite warriors to scour the earth, leave no stone unturned, no structure standing, burn this world to its foundation, and then shift through the ashes." Him going on to continue to say that he's going to take the Chaos Emerald and go show it to his dimensional engine for it to scan it and truly see if this power source is truly worth all of the effort he is doing here. But while Darkseid is getting a leg up on the League and the Hedgehog heroes also start to make a little bit of progress, as they finally crack the code, Cyborg and Tails, sending each of the pairs of heroes into different locations where they can find the closest emeralds. We even see a cool little interaction with the Flash and Sonic, with Wally going on to tell the little blue hedgehog, saying that he can move within a picosecond, which undoubtedly is fast no matter which way you stretch it. But then Sonic just has to one-up him, saying, "So your speed can still be measured? That's adorable." As you know, they continue to race off. But while the League is heading to their separate locations, Batman, being the master strategist and planner that he is, he starts to realize the obvious in what could happen with Darkseid already having one of the emeralds. He goes on to tell the rest of the League, "Okay, so yes, we have our action plan and what we need to do, but what about our contingency? Darkseid already has one of the mystic arcane power sources, the Emerald, and seemingly he can gain more. We may not be able to counter that." Superman, being the optimist though, just basically goes on to say, "Don't worry, Bruce, we'll find the others. We will not fail this world." But sure, the Justice League usually always delivers, but there are certain times when they don't. And as we will get to a little later, this could very well be one of those times. But moving over into a little bit of a battle montage, we see the heroes each arrive to their location and finds each of Darkseid's warriors and forces of Apokolips at each step of the way. As the battle begins and the hunt for the Chaos Emeralds ignites all across the globe, from Kalibak, Darkseid's son, to even Steppenwolf himself, who, at this point in time, we actually see has one of the Chaos Emeralds. Of course, he isn't as knowledgeable as Darkseid is, so he cannot use it to its full capabilities just yet, leaving Batman and Shadow just enough time to stop him, as immediately they spring into action, Batman going on to blind him, and in the blink of an eye, Shadow is able to grab the emerald from his palm, of course hitting Steppenwolf with a barrage of attacks that instantly down him, even Batman realizing just how impressive Shadow and his abilities are, saying that Shadow moved faster than Batman could even perceive, which for Shadow is like not breaking a sweat at all, because no, he didn't move fast, but he used something called Chaos Control to stop time itself, which is a neat little trick that could potentially come in handy against Darkseid, because how do you fight an opponent that could, stop time? And as soon as the heroes get one little win, instantly Darkseid and his plans go forward, and this spells the downfall and potentially doom of the Justice League. As the planet itself starts to shake and crack with energy, oceans being split open, cities beginning to crumble, Darkseid is starting to use and test the newfound power of the Chaos Emerald. As we see him in his little ship using the dimensional engine, which I don't know if there's any lore I missed, or what's the deal with this thing and why it has like a face on it, but this thing seemingly acts as Darkseid's supercomputer almost, like his version of the Bat computer. And as space and time itself starts to warp and change, Darkseid goes on to say, "With just this one emerald, I could mutilate this entire world. With all 7, I can mutilate universes." So, comfortably putting Darkseid multiversal tier of power with the emeralds, which is something you don't want Darkseid of all people to be. Of course, this revelation throws a wrench inside of the Justice League's plan, as Batman instantly realizes that yes, he needed a contingency plan, but for now they're out of time and they need to shift their focus onto Darkseid now. But they can't just walk up to Darkseid's fortress, his ship, his Ragnarok as it's called. It has a bunch of defenses, ones that the Justice League and the heroes aren't prepared to fight against and break through right now. And that's when it happens, one of the most unlikely twist of events starts to go down as we finally see Dr. Eggman make his appearance. No, he isn't acting super evil in this, wants to help Darkseid. If anything, he wants to side with the heroes because, in his own words, no one gets to conquer his world. So using some of Dr. Eggman's tech and his giant ship, he is able to penetrate through Darkseid's defenses and let the League and the heroes enter into this now fortress where they're going to take the fight to Darkseid himself. And of course, while on board, the Flash and Sonic are able to locate Darkseid first, being the fastest ones in the entire group. Darkseid even making notice of this again, meeting these two same people from the beginning. He says, "I will give your world credit for one thing. You have tenacity." As he he goes on to charge his Omega Beams up once more to blast and incinerate the duo here. But it is intercepted and stopped by Superman himself, just being the absolute powerhouse and tank that he is, stopping both Cold in his tracks. And with all of the heroes now here, not only the Justice League, but the other Hedgehog and other creatures, they all instantly go to jump Darkseid. Which surely all of these heroes plus the Justice League should be able to, stop Darkseid once and for all. But Darkseid is able to hold his own, matching Superman blow for blow, resisting the quote-unquote universe's strongest weapon, the Green Lantern ring, along with Wonder Woman's unbreakable lasso and some psychic power from Silver. I say all of that to say, they essentially have Darkseid momentarily subdued, with it almost seeming too easy, Shadow even making notice of this, saying, "You Justice League heroes really struggle with this? Pathetic." But of course, with Shadow being their ace in a hole, if you will, he goes on to use his trump card, the Chaos Control, going on to separate the Chaos Emerald from Darkseid's grasp and power. And oh yeah, remember before how I said Batman was a master tactician and strategist? Well, Darkseid is every bit as capable, as everything that has just transpired was all still according to his plan, him going on to say, "The Father Box discovered much about your world, about this quote-unquote chaos control, with him starting to resist and get back up, Shadow even being confused, saying this is impossible," which to most mortals and other people, sure, but to Darkseid, absolutely not, because Darkseid is. As just then, the tides of battle instantly change, and it's now Darkseid on the opposing force, just destroying the other heroes here. But it's not just Darkseid. He also has the dimensional engine from before that seemingly was powering up using the power of the Chaos Emeralds. So of course, Flash, being the scientist and genius level intellect that he is, he tells Sonic that the Chaos Emeralds are your sort of thing. I'm going to go see if I can stop this engine. So the two different speedsters, having their separate missions, go on to do what they need to do. But as we also see and find out, neither are successful. At most, they're just buying time that they're not really going to be able to do anything with, as Darkseid has finally had enough toying and playing around, flexing the power of the new Chaos Emerald and just instantly downing the other creatures and Sonic Hedgehog heroes. Even Flash and the Justice League not having enough time to shut down the dimensional engine as it starts to roar to life. The entire concepts of time and space being completely crumbled and destabilizing as we speak. And here we see a little bit of the contingency plan that Batman was mentioning earlier. What if everything fails? What if they aren't able to stop Darkseid and they lose? Well, Batman's contingency plan, as we find out, is just one to escape, but not the Justice League or the heroes here. No, Darkseid is their problem. Instead, he teams up with Cyborg, opening a boom tube, and sends the Hedgehogs elsewhere, as Bruce's final words to them is that the Justice League are putting their faith inside of them, as they are then sent off, but not across the world, not even across the universe, but universes, the multiverse, as instantly on the other side, they are greeted by Mr. Terrific. The Hedgehogs going on to quickly explain the situation to Mr. Terrific, saying that reality itself was collapsing, and they sent them here to protect them. But they have to reopen a boom tube so they can get back to the Sonic world and help them. But here, as we see the devastating news, Mr. Terrific goes on to say, he can't, because there's no dimensional coordinates to target. Your entire world is gone. Darkseid, the Justice League, and everything else completely gone. As we find out, the Hedgehogs are now in the DC universe on the Justice League Watchtower. Meaning in the same way that Darkseid and the Justice League invaded Sonic's world, now the Hedgehogs are going to have to invade the DC universe to try and rally up some troops or get some help so they can somehow find their way back to their own world and defeat Darkseid and the Chaos Emeralds once and for all. And with Mr. Terrific here explaining to the group that essentially their world is completely cut off, untraceable, it's like it never even existed. Meaning their world plus the Justice League and Darkseid are completely gone, and now Earth here is now partly defenseless without some of its most powerful heroes, the Justice League. So naturally the superpowered animal Hedgehogs here go on to step up to the plate to become the new heroes because the Justice League saved them, and each of them eventually do fit into their role of the hero they're trying to represent or the Justice League member they're trying to replace, us first starting and seeing Silver becoming the Green Lantern. Now he says Green Lantern before, John Stewart gave him a ring, and it's unclear if it was directly the ring on his finger, if he just had like a spare in his back pocket or whatever, but we actually see he has enough willpower to become a very formidable and usable lantern, as even going to war with some of the other lanterns and Sinestro himself, we see that he isn't just dead weight. And while yes, the Green Lanterns have a ton of experience fighting some of the other Lantern Corps members, even the Yellow Lanterns here, especially Sinestro, it seems like for whatever reason, he's just so much more powerful than he normally would be, which is going to be a reoccurring theme that we're going to get and explain a little bit more on. But it seems like Sinestro is currently soloing a full platoon of Green Lanterns until Silver is able to make a giant hammer, citing the Green Lantern Oath, powering up, smacking, then completely destroying the yellow construct dragon creature and grabbing Sinestro's power lamp. Now, and the reason why he was so powerful before, one, Sinestro himself being able to take on Kilowog and the rest of the other lanterns present was because he wasn't just being powered by his yellow lantern ring. No, he was being powered by a Chaos Emerald, meaning it wasn't just Sonic and the other Hedgehog heroes being brought in, but also these very powerful artifacts that has been dispersed all over the DC universe. But that was off in space. Picking back up on Earth in Washington, DC, the area where Wonder Woman would usually patrol and protect, we see Gorilla Grodd has essentially taken over. He too is empowered by a Chaos Emerald, boosting his mental and psychic abilities up to level 11, being able to one-shot and take care of Supergirl, Hawkgirl like they were nothing, even leading an entire army of other powered-up gorillas to, try to take over the nation. But unfortunately, as he is monologuing and distracted, a rope gets tied around his neck as he is yanked from behind, and it is Amy coming in to sideswipe and yank the emerald from his head, essentially depowering him and loosening his hold on Supergirl and Hawkgirl, allowing them to clean up the rest of the gorillas in the mess here. Though once more, Amy realizes that the entire reason why Grodd was able to do this and he seemed more powerful is because of the Chaos Emerald that he was wielding. So she grabs it and moves on. As we move on to see Knuckles now portraying Superman in Metropolis. Now, I'm not too entirely sure where this came from. Is this just a normal part of his power set? But I never remember Knuckles being able to fly. He's always been stronger than the rest, but never as fast, and never that I remember being able to just straight up fly around. Regardless, as he's impersonating Superman here, he's watching over the great city of Metropolis, even going as far as to meet with Lois Lane on top of the Daily Planet to talk about the current affairs about what's going on. It's been days, weeks, months since they originally first got brought to this universe, and there still hasn't really been any sort of progress about locating their world and getting the Justice League back. But it seems like Tails is teaming up with the Teen Titans to look into it. Though that's not the important thing, the only reason why he's here meeting with Lois is because of Lex Luthor. Because seemingly Lex Luthor is planning something in the shadows, as he always is doing, especially with the main Superman gone, Clark Kent. Lex Luthor would be ecstatic, even if there is this pretender animal hedgehog in his place. But though Knuckles being the hothead, he decides to rush in and directly confront Luthor to see about what's even going on. And it's kind of funny as Lex Luthor here kind of let himself go, he's just like fat for whatever reason, looking more like a version of Kingpin than any sort of traditional version of Lex Luthor. Though, like I said, Lex is warming up to this Knuckles Superman more than he ever would the original Superman, as he even goes on to say, believe it or not, I've been watching you for quite some time now, and unlike your predecessor, the original Superman, you don't flaunt your godly powers. Sure, you're certainly more capable than most of the other humans, yet you still have very mortal limits. But even still, you take the danger and burden of protecting everyone and everything to the best of your natural abilities, and he respects that. So Lex Luthor tries to offer Knuckles here a partnership, saying what an influential duo they could become. Though Knuckles isn't stupid, he can pretty clearly see Lex is up to no good and only trying to really save face and manipulate him into working with him for whatever reason. So Lex just immediately jumps to plan B, going on to say, such a pity, you share the Kryptonian's moral failings. I wonder, do you share his same weaknesses too? As he pulls out a case that seemingly looks like kryptonite. Now, under any normal circumstances, obviously kryptonite would do nothing to Knuckles, maybe long-term exposure would also give him some sort of radiation poisoning like it would a normal human, but even that is kind of flimsy at best. Though what Lex Luthor doesn't know, and is pretty stupid, that this green powerful gem here wasn't kryptonite at all, but it was a Chaos Emerald. Like Lex Luthor, he's supposed to be like top 5 smartest humans on Earth, and arguably someone with the most experience dealing with kryptonite itself, and yet he even couldn't tell that this little green gem here wasn't an artifact of unimaginable power. Like, what? It's just kind of silly when you think about it, but at the same time, this is an alternate universe, so maybe this Lex is just kind of stupid here, or at least comparatively to his main counterpart. But next up on the list, we have Gotham City. Obviously, the psychotic and insane villains are just going to run amok. Sure, there are other heroes like your Nightwing or the rest of the Bat family, but Batman at any point in time is usually the main protector here. So it's even worse when the Joker starts just causing havoc and wreaking destruction all across the streets of Gotham. But just like all of the other Justice League members we've seen so far, he is also replaced by Shadow, who is taking Batman's place as his new vigilante. And Joker even goes on to call him the Shadow of the Bat, which is such a fitting and cool moniker if I had to say. Either way, as they get into a little bit of a scuffle, there's realistically nothing the Joker could do to Shadow. Ultimate life form with chaos control was even able to give Darkseid the briefest moment of pause in a battle. And side note for a second, I can only imagine how Batman would react if Shadow here actually took it a step too far and killed the Joker. I wonder, would he be mad that, Shadow is dressing up like Batman, going around and actually killed someone that Batman has tried so hard to try and rehabilitate over the years? Or would he kind of just be complacent case, everything can't be in Bruce's control. One day the Joker would have got what's coming to him and died either way, so Shadow doing it here is kind of just like unfortunate but not unexpected. Either way though, Shadow, destroys the Joker in the confrontation. It's even revealed that Joker also had a Chaos Emerald, yet he did absolutely nothing with it. Now I'm not sure if you need any special knowledge how to use it, but Darkseid with just one was seemingly unstoppable, using universal levels of power and warping reality. Yet some of the other villains here are barely using it to their fullest potential, especially Lex Luthor, which I'm still on about, like one of the most smartest beings and humans on Earth. With an artifact that powerful, just does nothing and keeps it in a box, yeah. Though again, I have to wonder, maybe it's kind of like the Infinity Stones, how they aren't really that usable or applicable outside of their main original universe. So maybe the Chaos Emeralds are the same thing. Maybe there's no chaos energies for the actual emeralds to manipulate individually once they're out of the Sonic universe. But again, that might actually be proven false as we move over to see the Flash, who's now Sonic himself masquerading as the Flash, fighting Reverse Flash. And at first glance, this could be so interesting. How would Sonic interact and react to something as the negative Speed Force? But again, the Reverse Flash isn't just here dangerous because of the negative Speed Force, but he also has one of the Chaos Emeralds itself. Because even though the Reverse Flash, Thawne, he hates Barry, he kind of still holds Barry up on a certain pedestal and level of respect. Because he even goes on to tell Sonic that, sure, you may look like the Flash and you're wearing the uniform, but you have no right to. The real Flash was a hero, but you're just a child playing dress up, a smart-mouthed pretender who lacks the focus and conviction to fill the Flash's boots. You're not good enough to be his replacement. Heck, you're not even good enough to be his fate. Berating and saying all of this, while effortlessly almost dodging and outspeeding him. Sonic even having to take a second and admit himself that Reverse Flash is pretty fast. But hearing this just strokes his ego, because now he claims himself as the fastest man alive now, unchallenged, now that Barry Allen or any of the main other Flashes are gone. Of course, him going on to another rant and ramble about how he'll never retrieve the Chaos Emerald till he looks down and sees where the emerald should have been in his hand is nothing but just a random crumpled up soda can as the Flash sped and took it from him. Now I was not sure if Sonic here was just playing and toying with Reverse Flash, not using his full speed and is clearly faster than him, or if it was more of a case of playing to the villain's weaknesses and distracting him, then using his speed and taking it from him. Regardless of how it actually happened, with the emerald now in Sonic's possession, this battle is over. It's completely one-sided as Sonic just obliterates and dominates the Reverse Flash, hitting him with a flurry of punches, taking him out just like that. He literally beat him so hard and fast that Reverse Flash has to question himself, wait, that was too fast. Did he tap into the Speed Force? But no, it couldn't have been that. Maybe he was using the emerald to warp and make himself faster or stronger. But yeah, the power levels and scaling of all of the characters here are kind of wildly all over the place. But being in an alternate universe or timeline or whatever you want to explain it as, where this crossover is happening, you can kind of just wave it away for the story. Either way, this new Flash races off to meet up with the rest of the heroes, as each of them have their own Chaos Emerald that they need to convene and talk about as they meet at the Hall of Justice, their current headquarters. The only other member here that we didn't see and what they did was Tails, as he is in kind of Cyborg's armor and getup. Of course, even Beast Boy here is using his shape-shifting abilities to turn into whatever species Knuckles is, which also begs the question, because Sonic himself, his speed, he isn't anything special. Like, he wasn't experimented on, or he didn't get his speed or powers from any other outside source. He kind of just is born fast in a way. It's natural to him. So if Beast Boy in the same fashion would turn into whatever species Sonic is, a hedgehog, then would Beast Boy also be just as fast as Sonic? Kind of interesting to think about, and hopefully it'll be brought up a little bit later. But for now, they get down to business. With 6 of the 7 Chaos Emeralds all in one place, it kind of acts like a homing beacon. Because all 7 of them wants to be together, the combined powers here are able to locate the last missing one, which is still on Sonic's Earth, essentially opening a link in a map, in a trail for them to follow back and get to the lost Justice League in Darkseid. Also being revealed that Darkseid and whatever his engine when it exploded in the previous part, it kind of put the world or their universe in a small little pocket dimensions, cut off from any other source until now that the trail and connection has been relinked. And with that, after heading back to Mr. Terrific to tell him their findings and what everything is going on, they eventually are able to open a portal back to their Darkseid invaded world, signaling this makeshift Justice League to now come to the aid of the real Justice League and finally try to put Darkseid and his plans down for good. And after a struggle with Darkseid barely getting away, the Justice League got separated and stranded from the other heroes, meaning Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern, and Cyborg are now on a completely different Earth, Sonic's Earth, with one main and pretty simple task. Go ahead and gather all of the Chaos Emeralds and bring the fight back to Darkseid, which in theory is pretty simple. It's a fetch quest, though one on a completely new planet with physics and powers that they have never seen before. Not even to mention that Darkseid's forces are still pretty rampant and all across the globe here. But the League splits up, taking each corner of the globe one by one, finding each Chaos Emerald. Wonder Woman fighting against some of the female furies of Darkseid. She eventually is rewarded and given the Chaos Emerald from another character named Blaze the Cat. The other League members being no different. Batman now heading to fight Metal Sonic for the Chaos Emerald, which realistically speaking, there's no way Batman should even stand a chance, physically at least, against Metal Sonic, a robot that has been built to rival Sonic in not only speed but power. Now maybe if he were to infect the robot somehow with some advanced virus or using his genius to take him down that way, that would be more plausible. Instead here, Batman goes in for close quarter combat, using his gear, batarangs, and eventually just running him over with his motorcycle, which seems to be enough to down Metal Sonic and let Batman retrieve the Chaos Emerald. The Flash, of course, making light work of his own enemies, being too fast for anybody to even do anything, as he just yanks the emerald and moves on. Though because he completed his mission in, well, a Flash, he takes the time to run around Sonic's world and just amazed by all of the running potential and obstacles it has. Superman, on the other hand, gets Dr. Eggman, Sonic's arch enemy, if you will. Superman just completely decimates any technology or defenses that Eggman could muster. Because while Sonic is faster than probably even Superman, he doesn't have the same strength and other abilities to just crumple through Eggman's tech and robots like Superman can. Clark even taking the time to question Eggman. Your entire world is being devoured and destroyed by Darkseid, yet people like you still pursue their ambitions to take over. Shouldn't self-preservation be your top goal? But him too, he gets the Chaos Emerald and makes it on his way, with John Stewart, the Green Lantern, doing the same, and eventually everybody meeting back up at the headquarters. Cyborg already having a plan and model in place to harness the power of the Chaos Emeralds to essentially open a wormhole or multiversal portal into the main DC universe for them to reconnect with Sonic and all of them, in which that's exactly what happens. The Hedgehogs finally make it back to their own Earth, still wearing their Justice League inspired costumes from their time protecting Earth, the DC Earth. And with everybody finally back together now in one piece, it's time for the final play in their plan, a direct attack on this now souped up, powered up Darkseid. With Darkseid currently channeling the energy of just one Chaos Emerald, he's not only pulling the planet apart, but Sonic's entire reality and universe into pieces. So they come up with another plan, another one that's pretty simple in idea, but in execution is heck of a lot harder. Because they have the superior numbers and even superior Chaos Emeralds, realistically all they have to do is go in there, confront Darkseid, use the Chaos Emeralds to draw out the one Darkseid is using, and then use that power to set everything straight and defeat him. Way easier said than done, but they wouldn't be the heroes of two separate universes if they didn't at least try, and that's exactly what we see. Of course, the Flash and Sonic are the first ones to make it and confront Darkseid because they are the two fastest on the team, but for Darkseid, this seems to be the thing he has hoped for. Essentially, the Justice League brought him the other tools, the other Chaos Emeralds, and the other great powerful artifacts for him to use and harness to not only destroy and lay waste to this world and universe, but plenty others after that, sending everybody into a state of full-on war and attack. If they are to even hope to match Darkseid, they have to hold nothing back, keep him occupied the best they can while Cyborg and Tails use the other emeralds to connect with the last emerald Darkseid has to set everything straight. All while Darkseid is just, casually resisting and overpowering two lanterns with some of the most powerful artifacts of power on their fingers. Yet in this moment, Darkseid is distracted, long enough for Sonic to come blazing in and steal the Chaos Emerald from the palm of his hands. Cool, part one of the plan done. Now he just needs to get the last emerald with the rest of them so they can finally turn all this around. The only problem is too far up in the sky and Sonic has nothing to run on. But because reality is literally falling apart around them, physics are nothing more than a joke in here. So Flash comes up with a pretty interesting solution, literally matching each other step for step, pace for pace, and essentially walking on each other's feet, going so fast they start to fly and go up. Yeah, as stupid and crazy as it looks, in the same fashion is also pretty darn cool. Darkseid though isn't just going to watch and let this happen. So right before Sonic is able to put the last emerald in and successfully activate whatever machine they were building, Darkseid uses his Omega beams and it interferes. So Sonic, thinking quick, in the heat of the moment he changes the plan. With all of the emeralds here, he decides to activate them all and gain its power, turning into Super Sonic, which essentially is just a new form that multiplies everything Sonic can do times 10, 100 even, in which now deciding to engage Darkseid in a one-on-one. Yeah, Super Sonic fighting Darkseid. If you would have told me this was going to be an official crossover comic from DC and Sonic a year ago, I would have said no way. Yet here we are. Even still though, as Darkseid fights back, you can call it being smug, or you can just call it Sonic being that powerful, but But he goes on to tell Darkseid that he hits like a featherweight, which is all fine and dandy. But this still leaves the problem of fixing everything here. Reality is still collapsing in on itself. And now that Sonic has taken the emeralds, everybody has to think of a new plan. Thankfully, the machine still has residue energy, golden energy, from all of the emeralds. Yet it's still missing something. It needs that last push, that last bit of energy to fully activate. And the main difference between someone like the Flash and Sonic, sure, Sonic is fast, but he's just like naturally fast. He doesn't have any other source of power, unlike the Flash here, who was connected to the Speed Force, one of the 7 fundamental forces of the universe itself, which should be pretty sufficient to get this machine up and running as long as the other heroes can stall Darkseid for as long as they can. And speaking of which, they're doing a pretty good job as everybody just goes on to jump Darkseid, not letting up for a second to let him regain his footing. From Superman to Super Sonic, Shadow, Wonder Woman, etc. Eventually Darkseid has had enough. He gets annoyed, telling everyone that he will suffer no more further indignity as he starts to shift and change. Now, it's pretty vague and not fully explained what exactly is he doing and what's happening. Like, is he still siphoning off some of the energy from the Chaos Emerald he had before? Is this just him unleashing his full power of the Omega Sanction? We don't know, but what we do know is it is incredibly powerful and incredibly dangerous, as instantly with this one move, Darkseid is now on the winning side. Wonder Woman even going on to say he's bringing down the very fabric of reality. If this continues, they will all cease to exist. Though being the proclaimed fastest man alive has its perks, as before Darkseid can fully ramp up his power and just completely decimate and atomize everybody there, suddenly the Flash has built enough of the Speed Force to activate the device, using it and not only separating the two universes, but rewriting reality to set everything straight, getting rid of Darkseid, his forces, and everything that he tried to do and destroy. Of course, in the process, sending everybody back to their rightful homes and rightful Earths. The Justice League reporting at each of their own cities, Metropolis, Gotham, Central City, the Watchtower, etc. But even Sonic and the other heroes back on his Earth. So seemingly in the end, everything got resolved pretty neatly. It even being revealed that because Darkseid and his Ragnarok, his little mini planet, was in the center of the whole ordeal, it lost its anchor point between time and space, and he's not going to be bothering anyone anytime soon. But the real kicker is, even though Darkseid and his plans were stopped, there are still many other great threats, not only in the DC universe, but in Sonic's world as well, as we see this universe's version of Lex Luthor teaming up with Dr. Eggman, because of course the two geniuses were easily able to reconnect the link in portals between the two worlds, and now they team up a glorious new partnership to bring both worlds to their knees. But yeah, that was the Sonic x DC crossover. And honestly, the main appeal is the actual Sonic and Flash interactions and speed racing. Even though we didn't really get any sort of concrete answer, not like it would even mean anything, because this isn't even the main canon version of Flash or Sonic, but it would have still been a cool nod to have a definitive winner and definitive fastest creature thing man alive. But if you've enjoyed watching, leave a like or subscribe if you're new and want to see more content just like this. As always, this was AJ here at The Hero Informer, and thank you for watching.